Good morning, everyone, and welcome to BJ's Esoteric Musings. I'm BJ, if you haven't figured that out yet, and I want to welcome several new subscribers to my channel. Thank you so much. And I am still playing with this sound, so if this microphone gets any closer, we might be going steady, but hopefully you're hearing this. I I am working from a very minimal laptop that doesn't have a lot of bandwidth. When I first got it, it was almost like going to be utilized as a notebook. I am writing a book, so that's why we got this laptop. And then within a few months of that happening, I started getting this prompt to come and do YouTube and a channel. So following the prompts, like all of us are trying to do as we feel things coming online and magnified for us and all of that, we have to be true to that call, however it calls us. So that's what I'm doing. I did have some interesting exchanges yesterday in after Susan Lynn's her wow video that she does on Wednesdays, which is now Wisdom instead of Way Out Wednesdays. But there was something that came up about how Spirit intervenes in our lives for our benefit, how they reach out to us, how we know those signs, and how we manifest those things in our world. I've mentioned before that I have become very good at manifesting over the years, and I trust that process implicitly. And so I had someone ask me, because I shared something about the first home I ever purchased and how that whole scenario went down. And I may share it here this morning. If I repeat for anyone, I apologize for that. But it is a beautiful lesson in holding true to what you're manifesting and staying that course, even when everything in the muggle world tells you not to do so. But the person came back and said, "That's amazing. Was that a dream? Are you psychic?" And my first thought, as it was for many, many years, when anyone would ever ask me that directly, "Are you psychic?" I would say, "Oh, I would shrink away a little bit." Very odd, I know, for a Leo, but because Leos are so ego driven, and I have worked so hard on that through my life to not see myself always in that first position, as most Leos just naturally step up and go, "Yeah, here I am, let's go." And I didn't find that attractive as a quality, so I worked diligently to suppress that. But in doing so, what I also was doing was suppressing what truly is that which I came into this life with, which is my gifts and talents. And so I shocked myself when I responded to the questionnaire and I said, "Yes, I am a psychic medium." And I was like, "Wow, you just declared that on YouTube." But yes, I am, and I'm comfortable in declaring that. I realize that although I don't consider myself a direct channel per se, I have that capacity. I do more what I call spontaneous downloads, where I'll be having a conversation with someone and something comes in, and I say, hold on, we're getting something," and then I just rattle it off, whatever it is. Blah, 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 blah. That's what I have, and usually I always follow that up with, "I hope that makes sense to you," because sometimes it's the most nonsensical things. I think early on, one of my first videos, I shared about coming to Oregon and then utilizing a new massage therapist. And the first time I climbed on her table, I could not get past this overwhelming sense of a big old frog sitting right on my face. And I thought, well, Lord, I've never had that happen. That's got to be the strangest thing. And something kept prompting me, tell her about it, talk to her about it. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't even know this one. I'm not going to turn around and say, do you know anything about frogs? But finally, it became so much like a burr under the saddle that I said, okay, I got to ask you something. And she says, what? And I said, I've been laying here this whole time with this big old frog on my face. Do you know why? And she just laughed and she says, oh my goodness. She said, I have just become aware of frog energy coming into my totem of animals, animal and spirit guides. Um, and so you're giving me a confirmation here that, yes, indeed, frog medicine is around me. And I'm like, well, thank goodness. I was trying to figure out why I had this frog on my head. But back to how manifestation and spirit moves through our lives. I will repeat this story briefly. I'll try to do a Reader's Digest version here. But when I bought my first home, I was still living in Arizona. I was several years divorced from my first husband. I had two children. They were, let's see, they were in sixth grade when I bought that home. So that makes them 11, 10 and 11, 11 and 12. And I knew I had had a dream. At once I got this message that you need to buy a home. I thought, I have no money saved. I have no wherewithal to even qualify for a home. How is this going to work? But I knew if Spirit was pushing me that way, that I needed to hold fast and stay the course and do as directed. So I said, I'm going to buy a home. And I got a realtor, and he took me all around, and I kept telling him my criteria for a home, and things weren't lining up. Well, I did have this dream, and I vividly saw the home that I would be purchasing. And my then boyfriend, when we woke up that morning, I said, well, I've seen my house. And he was very much a left brain skeptic. And he said, oh, really? So describe it to me. And I said, well, it's a beautiful white stucco home. I said, it reminds me of the bungalow homes along the El Camino in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, where I grew up. And I said, it's got black shutters, black trim. It has a carport that has a lattice in black along one side. Huge trees. And he's like, at that point, he's like, yeah, Arizona, where are you going to find huge trees in this valley? But he said, yeah, okay, whatever. So I continue with my realtor, and he brings me to this home. And the minute we pulled up, in fact, I even hesitated because it was too perfect to my dream. I thought, oh, this can't be. So he brought me in. This was a beautiful home built in 1945, 46 time frame. So very true to that architecture. It had beautiful built-in curio cupboards on the wall in the living room. It had an alcove built in with small shelves for knickknacks, archways through every room. So when you left the living room, you had a beautiful arch that went through the dining room and then into the kitchen area. But this home was perfect. And I said, okay, let's write an offer. And we wrote an offer, and the realtor that represented the buyer kept coming back and saying, no, we're not going to budge. You pay everything, pay full price. And I thought, well, that's not going to fly, because I needed it to be under a certain price point for me to be able to stretch, because I was going to be I did everything wrong with this. I did an adjustable rate mortgage, which, that those can burn you terribly. And I knew that, but I knew I needed that stretch. So I thought, okay, I'll do it this way and then refi it in a few years and get a fixed rate. So we went back 3 different times, and every time the response was no, pay everything, pay full price. So finally my realtor said to me, well, BJ, this isn't going to happen. They're not working with us at all. And I said, well, okay. And he says, well, let's get busy looking at more houses. And I said, no, I don't think so, because this is my house. And he says, no, they're not going to work with us. And I said, well, just give it some time. This is my house. They just don't know it yet. And he kind of shook his head and he says, I realize you're disappointed. I'll give you a few days and then we'll get back on it. And so he called me after a few days. I said, no, I'm not. I got stuff going on. I mean, on top of everything else, I was in the process of doing my general studies. I was working on my degree at night and waiting to get into my physical therapist assistant program at the school up in Phoenix. So I'm working full time, raising two kids, going to night classes, trying to buy a home. I mean, this is just my life. I can never just have one thing on my plate. I got to have the whole smorgasbord. So I'm like, oh, geez. So sure enough, 2 weeks, just about 10 days, 2 weeks rolls by, and I get a call. I was doing inpatient rotations at the hospital, and the department secretary had forwarded up a call to the nurses station on the floor I was on to take this call. So it was my realtor, and he says, are you sitting down? I said, well, I'm standing at the nurses station. I can hang on to the desk here. What's going on? He says, well, you're not going to believe this. He says, this has never happened to me. But he said, I heard from the other realtor on that home that you want so bad, and they've decided that they will accept your offer if you're still interested. And I said, let's get her done. And he says, okay, well, let me warn you, this is arduous, this process. And this was before things were, e-signature and things like that, which has made buying homes streamlined now. But back then, no. Every time I turned around, I was running paperwork up to Scottsdale from where I was living, which, was a good 20-25 minutes. And so he said, just whenever they ask for anything, just get it to them. Don't question it. Just get it to them. And it's going to just be prepared. It's going to take a little bit. Usually these things can take a month or two. And I said, no. I'll be moving into my home by the first week of October. And he looked at me. He said, that's 2 weeks away. There's no way that can go that fast. I'm like, okay. So needless to say, on the 5th of October, keys in my hands, all paperwork done and signed, I was moving into our home. And the realtor was just baffled. He says, I've just never seen anything like this. I've never had a client quite like you, nor have I seen this process go so quickly once things were in hand. And I said, well, that's how things roll in my world. And so, welcome to my corner of the kingdom. And he just chuckled. But ironically, the home had been owned by a single woman. And about a week after I bought the home, there's a knock at the door, and I answered the door. And this lovely lady says, hi, I'm the previous owner that you bought the house from, and I'm here to give you this. And I invited her in, and she hands me this manila envelope that's chocked full of every bit of transaction ever done on that home since the 40s. All the original paperwork on the appliances, the upgraded appliances over time. I mean, everything was there. The plot map, everything was there. And that was fun. And she had no idea what had gone on. Apparently, her realtor was the one making all these decisions, never even running anything by her. And so she says, well, gosh, if they would have just let us talk, we could have gone for a cup of coffee and had this all wrapped up. I said, well, that's kind of what I was feeling, but, at least it worked out. So I was 7 years in that home, almost right down to the date when I relocated to Southern Oregon. Now, my sister had contacted me. Her husband had passed away the year before. And she let me know that she really wanted to pull the core family, so myself and her and our parents, back together under one roof because our mother was in early onset dementia. We knew that process because dementia's rampant in my mother's family, especially with the women. And so I said, well, I've been looking at Oregon as a consideration because I've never liked being out here in the desert. So let's take a road trip. She says, okay. So we came up to Southern Oregon. We were there 3 days, met with a realtor, and started looking for homes. And as we, excuse me, didn't mean to bump that. As we pull up in front of this house, I said, this is our house. And my sister said, how do you know that? We've not even walked in the door yet. I said, she goes, how do you do that? I said, I just do. I know. It's our house. It's exactly what we said we wanted. The floor plan is perfect. There's the right number of rooms. This is our house. So we go in there, we look around. It's our house. And we put in an offer. It was accepted before we ever left Oregon. And we began the process of buying that home, getting it ready for us to relocate. Now, my sister and parents were moving from northern Utah to the home, and they got there in August of that year. My daughter decided that she was going to move up to Oregon. She had 1 year of college under her belt and decided she was going to transfer schools and go up there. So she went up, left literally on my birthday in August that year, and moved up to Oregon. And she moved in with a lifelong friend of mine's cousin, who my friend had custody of because she was mentally challenged. And they had bought the home right next door to my friend for her cousin. But it was a big home, and she didn't like living alone, and so she offered my daughter a great deal to move in there at no cost. And it gave her an opportunity to get her feet under her as an adult and independence. And so it worked out beautifully all around. And then I followed up in October. I moved up, like I say, almost to the day of when I had bought the home 7 years earlier. I was moving up myself, and my son remained in Arizona in the home with his friends, and they continued to rent it for a while, probably for about a year, before I ended up selling. Hang on. What you got?
Somebody has become aware of you, and they're seeking to explore how to take advantage of you, harm you.
What?
So for protection, focus.
Okay. Wow. I was warned of that. Oh my gosh. Well, I thought I had paused this, but I think you folks heard that entire exchange between my husband and I. And he brought me the cathedral. The cathedral, this stone, gosh, I don't even know if I could do it justice. This thing, it's hard to see because I don't have light on for glare. But this thing I call the cathedral, it is a rutilated clear quartz crystal with so many lands and entry points into it. It's amazing. And it's got pyramids in the base of it. There's they stack like mountain ranges. They're all in this area. And I felt very impressed to buy this crystal. In fact, it wouldn't let me leave the shop until I did. It was one of the most expensive ones I bought at that time. And I didn't even get a hold of my husband. I normally would never make a purchase like that without talking to him. But I brought it back. We were spending the weekend at the coast, and I brought it back to the Verbo we were at. And I said, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I did this without talking to you at least. And he goes, well, what did you do? And I told him I had been captured by this stone and it had to come home. And he goes, well, what did you pay for it? And I told him. He goes, swallowed hard, and he goes, oh, let me see it. So I handed it to him, and all he said was, it's beautiful. I understand why you had to have it. And it's an amazing stone, and that's kind of interesting about the warning that he just brought me. I've been aware of this for a while. Somebody else brought this to my attention. But anyway, I digress. I have a great personal grid. I have lots of protection around me. I'm not going to worry about it. The home, the move. Okay, so again, bought a home right from the curb. Knew it was to be my house, our home. I still have an interest in that home, even though my husband, I married my husband like 10 years, almost 11 years later after moving up to Oregon. I met my husband and we married. And we relocated. We have this home we're in now, and this was another situation that we had been looking. The minute we drove up, I said, this is our home. My husband said the same thing my sister did. How do you know? We haven't even looked at it. I said, no, this is our home. I know it is. And so we came in, he looked around, and my husband desperately wanted a new build home. A new built, because he says, oh no, you when you buy a used home, you just buy problems. I said, not necessarily. It depends on the builder, the time frame, everything else. And so at first he took a hard pass, and I went back and forth with him. Why are you putting the thumbs down on this home? It's exactly everything we talked about. All the renovations done to it are what we would have done anyway, so they saved us that expense, and on and on and on. We came up 4 different times to look at this house, and every time I walked away saying, this is our house. I just don't get it. And even the sellers asked our realtor, so what is the holdup with, because you say you've got this interested couple, but they've not made any offers. And she says, well, it's the husband is reluctant. The wife is sold on the property, but it's her husband that's reluctant. And it was funny because as we had talked the few nights before this conversation was had with the realtors, he had said, well, I would be interested if this, right? And he named off these 4 things that were important. And we were playing cards that weekend with my sister and my dad. And we were telling them about the house. And both of them said to him exactly what I had. Oh no, if that home was built in the 50s, that home was built with 2x4s, with solid material, not compressed wood, not composite wood, not cheap ass, pardon my language, wood that they do now, like 1x2s, and they glue them together. It's ridiculous. They said, no, that's a solid home, and that's going to be one of the last time frames, because in the 60s things started shifting. And so he thought about that. Well, we came up for the 4th time to look at this home. And as we walked through it yet again, and while we were waiting for the realtor, we're sitting out front, and my husband finally in exasperation says, well, doggone it, if this is such a fabulous home, why hasn't anyone else bought it? It's been on the market for 6 months. And I just laughed. I said, because it knows it's our home. It's been waiting for you to make up your mind. And he just shook his head. Well, sure enough, he came in, and we were sitting here in this library area, and we have a fireplace just here to my left. And you can see part of the hearth down here at the corner. And I'm sitting on this hearth, and we're talking. And the realtor looks at Walter, and she said, oh, I forgot to tell you, the realtor, when she called me this week, she said that she had forgotten to say that this had all been done new within the last 10 years. And they were all the very things my husband was reluctant to deal with: plumbing, electric, wiring, all of that. And sure enough, all of that had been done. And he just looked at me and goes, okay, this is your game. This is your deal. I totally trust that you will negotiate this well for us. So you name the price on the house. I knew the price, and I should say I knew what the price would settle at. So what I did was I lowballed it by another $10,000 below the price I knew we would come in at, to give them a counter, because everybody likes to have some back and forth in the game, right? So sure enough, the realtor contacted us about 24 hours later and said, they didn't accept that first offer, but they've countered. And I said, okay, what's the counter? And she told us, and I looked at my husband, and he just rolled his eyes, and he says, okay. So I said, we're on it. Let's go ahead and write it up, and let's get this secured. So that's what we did. We did that in the fall of that year and moved up in the spring, like late winter, early spring time frame. And that was 8 years ago. And we love this home. My husband has come to say, I love this home. We have a beautiful home. I'm sorry I ever doubted you. And I just laughed and I said, how many times have you said that to me over the years? He says, well, I gotta do my part. So those are my experiences of manifesting homes. Now, another question I was asked about the first home: how did I know that what I was not, that the pushback I was getting was not coming from my guides, and that maybe they were trying to warn me off of that house? And the reason I didn't have concerns over that is because I've been at this a long time, and I had tested and proven my guides over and over. I used to play games with them all the time. At work, young ingenue, 20-something. I'd be at work, and I was engaged to a guy that worked 11 floors up from where I worked. And I had to courier stuff through the day up to his department, because they were they did all the transmission for the bank. So anything going out, Telex, TAFX, all those things that we had back then went through that department, all the communications. So I would get a stack and I'd tell my guides, okay, I'm just going to keep working, but you give me a sign when I should take stuff up so I can see my fiance, because I wouldn't always get to see him when we were at work. And so sure enough, I'd be typing away, working on something, and I'd get a prompt, and I'd grab up all the papers that were there and take them up. Sure enough, he'd have walked into the area where the front reception area desk was, and I'd be standing there, and he'd look up and, wave at me, and we'd chat for a minute, and then I'd come back down. So I played these games all the time, from the time I was little on up, because I was always testing. Is this real? Can I trust it? I was a child that had seizures for 5 years. I suspect a lot was going on because they were vicious grand mal seizures. And luckily, we discovered many decades later that it was environmentally driven. But when we left our home in South San Francisco and moved to the Oakland side of the bay is when all of my seizures stopped. And what I figured out after a long, like I say, decades, was that we had a nursery orchard behind our fence in South San Francisco, and they were always crop dusting. This is the 50s. They crop dusted with DDT. terrible poison. I was lucky. I was very lucky. And my, I remember my mother, which finally keyed me in that something was up. She said, "You know, I never realized that babies had so many seizures, had proclivity to seizures." I said, "Babies don't, Mom. What are you talking about?" She says, "Well, of the 8 babies born on the block the year you were, 7 of you had seizures." And I said, "Oh my God, Mom, that's a cluster. That is a cluster." And then we started talking about it. And she says, "Oh my gosh, no wonder why they could never find anything organically in your brain or whatever that was causing this seizure storms." But they were pretty brutal. I of course never remember the actual seizure going into it, but my mother kept detailed records. So I learned over time that I had a lot going on in my world from very early on. Okay, that's the hand I was dealt. But I knew I could, and I still know I can absolutely trust my guides and the messages that come from my guides. Of that, I have no doubt. So I stand on that knowledge with that authority, knowing that yes, I am a child of the Creator, as we all are, and I have the right to have my requests answered, however it chooses to answer them. I do not dictate how that will happen, just that I am open and ready to receive it when and however it comes. And I think that is key for so many things. We have to stand in our beliefs now more than ever in history, in any other time. We are facing a precipice that has not challenged this planet, and for all we know, ever. This is a whole different dynamic that we are moving through and toward. So yes, we need to be strong in what we are saying. We need to absolutely know where we fit in all of this and how we fit in all of this. And whether we always have the right answers or have them in the moment is immaterial. The thing is, we act on what we know, and we set up that line of communication between us and Spirit that says, "I trust you, I honor you, I value you, and I will listen to you." That, to me, is the important part. And for some reason, I'm grabbing up my crystal, my record keeper. Okay. This conversation has gone differently than what I had suspected it would go, but that's all right, because apparently this information needed to be heard. And so I may come back quicker with more because I was preparing some other things as well. But I do want to keep this shorter, so I'm going to just push this back so we can pull some cards. Let's do some cards. Okay, so do I want past life? Okay, for some reason my dream weavers wanted to be utilized again. I did those on my last go around. And I'm adding with the dream weavers the yin yang oracle. And this is done by Lilith Designs. And it seems to want to companion well with these dream weavers. And again, this is Colette Baron Reed's Dreamweavers cards, oracle cards. Okay. Oh, sorry for the sniffles here. All right. Can you show us what we need to focus ourselves for these times right after the eclipse and going forward? I hope all of you were able to get through the eclipse without too much repercussions, I guess is a good word. Um, we up here were not, I think we had 20%. Um, I was aware of it as it was going on, but it really didn't feel impactful until after an hour or two. I had been in the family room and I got up and realized I was dizzy. My stomach felt like it was going to do a flip-flop. I didn't know what was happening. And I figured it had to be due, to all that cosmic energy that the planet had just had. And I realized I'm hearing everything from 6 months effects after to 1 year for every minute that the eclipse went on. So it was basically 4 minutes. So 4 years of impact, which for everything going on, I can believe that. We're going to need all that and then some. All right, so where does our focus need to be? I'm going to try and do a pull a Hogarth. I don't have his beautiful big hands and long fingers, but I do like being able to fan them out rather than always in front. So I feel like something up here. Okay, 3 cards. I like to keep it simple. I'm chuckling because I'm thinking of Libby down there in Australia, who always says, 3 cards. I'm just going to pull 3 cards. And then she gets a little glint in her eye because she knows dang well she never pulls just 3 cards. She's going to pull half the deck. And it's funny, she loves to story, which is beautiful. I love to story too. But my cousin, Kathleen, that my husband calls my CT, we are CTs, definitely, cosmic twins. And that absolutely, when I've got some weird notification here I need to click off. There we go. But she stories, and she definitely has that same technique as she's working with the cards that Libby does, where she does her initial spread, and then she keeps going until the story stops, and I'll look down at her table and go, my gosh, cuz how do you handle it? Keep all that straight. But she does. She's a beautiful reader, and one of these days I'm going to get her to come sit in with me, and we can talk our stories about stonework and energy work and trust me, I'll get her here one way or another. I'll get her here. So our first card is card number 36. If a cat curls around the moon. If the cat curls around the moon. I'm a big cat. I'm a dog, but but I'm a Leo with too many placements in Leo to try and deny that I'm not a big cat. So, yeah, I felt like I was wrapped around the moon and still do to a great degree. But cat that wraps around the moon is embracing it, loving it, caressing it, and happily, look at that cat's face, happily nestled in the crescent. Couldn't be a happier cat. And then our next one, dragonflies. I love dragonflies and all kinds of critters in this. It is the card number 8. Could it be a dragonfly? Could it be a dragonfly that's coming in and influencing you? A dragonfly leads us to great mysteries, and leads us to a lot of different adventures. Look at all that going on in that card. We have a lot of adventures ahead of us in light work. I feel like this quite often. I'm sure you guys do too, but I'm going to focus on this column of light between these two characters. 42 is the card number. When you're neither here nor there. But look at that huge column. Energetic column, I will say. Beautiful, vibrant coloration pulsing through it. These two are standing along with it and benefiting from the energies that are percolating. And they look very happy and sassy that they're experiencing all of that. Now, that's the first three. Let's do some counters on these and find out where they're going to take us. Again, this is Lilith Designs Yin Yang Oracle. Okay. Lilith Designs. What do you want as clarifiers? What would you like to clarify for us today? Let's go ahead and have three cards, maybe four, depending what we get. 3 or 4 cards, please. 3 or 4. Alrighty. Oh, I love it. Oh my gosh. Okay, so on top of that cat on the crescent moon, we have home, commitment, the very things. Oops, I forgot. It's this up here. Sorry, I'm still learning all this equipment. So, family, home, commitment. It's what I've been talking about today. Trusting not only the home that is here, that is temporal, but trusting the family and home that we have on the wider expanse that is there, all of them, in commitment to helping us fulfill the purposes that we are here to do in this lifetime. What a beautiful blessing that is. Over the butterfly. Oh, excuse me, dragonfly. But this is perfect. The dragonfly was, could it be a dragonfly? And this is the transcendence and unity card over top of it. Transcendence and unity. That is what we're being asked to do, to transcend the mundane, to step into unity with all of the light workers that are here on the planet at this time, and to aid and assist in playing our part in this greater role that is before us. And over these two crazy characters standing on either side of this light portal, when you're neither here nor there, is a sunset, which is growth and summer. And everything that different readers in this community are pointing to, summertime, we have a lot of things popping off. So we need to be mindful. We need to stay the course. And we need to stay present and active in our day-to-day as we move through this. And so with that note, I'm going to wrap this. We're almost at 45 minutes, and that's longer than I wanted to be today. So I thank you so much. Again, thank you to the new subscribers. I hope you find this content helpful for you and beneficial, all of you. If you do, please do all the YouTube-y things, the like, share, subscribe. Costs you nothing, does everything to develop the algorithms for the channel, which I appreciate because the more the merrier, right? So, on that note, I'm going to wish you all uh, another week of wonderful happenings. Enjoy your weekend ahead. Hopefully, you've got some lovely plans or downtime if you're needing that after this eclipse and still moving through all that. I know a lot of people end up getting colds and different things going on that's kind of slowing them down. So, I wish you all well, and I will see you next time on BJ's Esoteric Musings. And until then, I say goodbye to all of you.